Okay, so a topic that Gabby and I have been talking about a lot and that we wanted to kind of discuss publicly is that Florida has a 4 feet and under ruling for class 1 and 2 crocodilia. Okay, so what this means is that you can, if you have your hours, then you can get an alligator, crocodile, caiman, whatever that is under 4 feet and keep it in your house. Okay, now normally with the class 1 and 2, so for class 1 are crocodiles, class 2 are alligators and caiman. Okay, so that's usually how they kind of split this up. And so for the class 2, what is normally required for class 2 is a minimum of 2.5 acres of land. And then, you know, the enclosure and all the other regulations involved in that. But what we're really getting at here is the land size and then the housing situation is what we're actually wanting to discuss here. So for class 1, for crocodiles, you have to have minimum of 5 acres of land. Okay, so the reasoning behind those requirements, now, you don't have to have the animal on 5 acres. You just have to own 5 acres. So the real reasoning behind those requirements, it's really a financial barrier to prevent people from being able to get the animals in the first place, which I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. But on the other hand, I do like having it be on a 5-acre parcel of land, so it prohibits you from being in the suburbs and just having a Nile crocodile, you know? So like, I think that's a good thing in many ways. But this 4 feet and under ruling means that you can have any of these species inside of your regular house in the suburbs without that requirement for the land. And this comes into a bunch of different associated issues with that. So for one, just on the safety side of it, if I have to have 5 acres and I have to have a perimeter fence around the area, so you have to have your enclosure fence and perimeter fence, then if my animal gets out, it has to get through the enclosure fence and then get through the perimeter fence. And then hopefully if you got 5 acres, you know, then you have enough land also to try to search for it before it gets into somebody else's problem, okay? So I think that's a really good safety move. 4 feet and under though, I can have a saltwater crocodile that is 3.5 feet long. That's not dangerous, right? You know, but it's not attacking anybody. So 3.5 feet long in my regular apartment in the city, my neighbors have no idea I have this animal, and then it gets out. Again, there's not really any real enclosure requirements for that 4 feet and under. It's just that it's in your house. And so if it's in your house and you just leave the door open or whatever, or you have a doggy door, that's not, they don't say you can't have a doggy door. So let's say you have a doggy door, your 3.5 foot saltwater crocodile gets out, and then it gets into the lake right behind your house or whatever, and then it's in there, fast forward 2 years, it's big enough to kill a human. That's a problem. I think that's a major safety concern, okay? I really, really don't like this 4 feet and under ruling that Florida has. I think if that animal were to get out, and then it can, obviously they can grow rapidly, you know, when they're young, and give it a year or two, and then that is a animal big enough to actually take down a person, okay? So or 3 years, whatever. Gabby's making this face.
I don't know. I don't know if I agree with the likelihood of them getting out of like a house or an apartment.
Well,
like maybe the tank, but...
Well, they literally get out of the regulatory enclosures. Look at the Nile crocodiles down in South Florida. You know, I caught one of those Nile crocodiles because we assume, we don't know this for a fact, we assume because it was a baby and it just walked right through the fencing. So, and then that thing grows, and it grows pretty quickly.
Yeah,
so,
I don't know. I still don't think it would get out of like a house or an apartment.
Other things do.
Oh, well, like snakes and stuff, and yeah, but...
Well, again, what about doggy doors?
Yeah.
There's nothing saying you can't have a doggy door, and they'll walk right through a doggy door.
Yeah.
Again, imagine a 3.5 or 3'11" saltwater crocodile walk right through a doggy door. Or if you left the door open or whatever, you know, like there's no real requirements on the entry of your house.
Meanwhile, our tegu has to be behind 2 locked doors at all times in his cage, can't be outside.
That has serious permitting, you know, but these crocodilians don't.
GPS coordinates, aerial shots
Pit
of the
tag.
pit tag,
No, pit tag's significant. There's no pit tag requirement on crocodilians. I think that's ridiculous.
I think on class 1, you either need a pit tag or a way to identify it. Something like that.
I think,
which obviously we know how to identify all our animals.
I think it's bogus. I don't know. I think it's a safety concern to have a 4-foot, potentially dangerous species inside of a regular house that your neighbors are completely unaware of. You know, and if that animal were to get out, or you know, again, they're not exactly. There's no mental health check. There are crazy people. I think that is a safety concern. Okay, so I just want to put that out there as the first thing. First and foremost, that's my problem with this 4 feet and under ruling. But my bigger problem personally is the ethics of it. So these animals are not pets. I don't think any crocodilian should ever be considered a pet by anybody, any species, period. I stand very strongly on that. We have ample evidence showing that whenever these animals are kept as pets in captivity, they almost always suffer major metabolic bone disease, malformed skull, malformed teeth, etc. The comparison I make is just like, imagine if you were raising a human baby, and instead of me being, so when I was like 15, I was already over 6 feet tall. So I got the genes to be tall, but imagine that same person, except I'm 3 feet tall now because I was improperly taken care of. But that's fine. That's what happens with these crocodilians. They're kept as pets, and you have animals that should be literally triple, quadruple their size at that age, and they're so stunted by improper captive care. Imagine that with humans. Imagine if all my teeth, when I went to smile, instead of seeing my teeth, they all went out like this, and my teeth didn't even touch. That's what happens to most captive raised crocodilians that are pets. They have such bad metabolic bone disease, their teeth don't even touch. They just literally go out like that instead of down. It's horrific. And we've done previous videos talking about metabolic bone disease if you want to go down that rabbit hole. But I think that's animal abuse.
I mean, God, I don't think that anyone in cold climates should have them, because unless you're like a billionaire and you can dedicate literally an entire gigantic room with a giant swimming pool and the proper lighting, you can't provide that animal with what it needs.
Yeah.
Unless we're talking like serious money. And there's a difference between surviving and thriving. We talk about this a lot,
Yeah. So this 4 feet and under ruling allows you to have a pet alligator, pet crocodile, pet caiman inside of your regular house. It has no requirements on providing the animal with UVB or proper calcium or proper nutrition, proper diet. There's no oversight on any of that stuff, which leads to the animal being almost always horrifically disfigured in ways that would make you think if it was a person, it would be literally a different species of hominid because of how deformed they become. When you see a captive raised alligator compared to a wild alligator, it literally looks like a different species. It is just so disfigured and stunted in its growth. It's really, really sad. So again, I don't think that should be allowed. I think that financial barrier to entry that I mentioned about the land that you need to be able to have the permit in the first place, I don't like it, but I also do kind of like it because it makes it where you have to be pretty serious about doing this, So like, I really don't like it, but I kind of do on that end, for the sake of the animal. But again, these animals, like, there's no oversight on how they're being raised. And guys, again, we're not talking about legitimate facilities. We're talking about just regular people who are trying to have one because they want one as like a pet. These things are not pets.
And 99.9% of people cannot properly take care of them. It's so rare that I see someone post a photo, like a private person with like, their gator or their caiman. And I'm like, wow, that's actually a really good setup. Like they're actually trying. Very rare. It's usually fish tanks, literally fish tanks.
Yep.
With like multicolored rainbow rocks. I'm like,
yep. And
what are
improper
you
lighting
doing?
and improper diet, and the animal suffers for it. So then the next point of contention on this 4 feet and under thing, I think, is that I want to make a comparison to the owl that we have. So the permit for the owl. So to justify having our owl permit, we have to exhibit it for, I suck at numbers. What are they again?
12 glove programs a year minimum, or 400 public viewing hours a year.
Okay, so that's a requirement for us to be able to have the non-releasable barred owl. So there's an educational component that is a requirement that does not exist for these things. I don't think, the dogs are being crazy over there. I don't think, Clover.
Clover's humping him.
She is humping him. I don't think that you should be able to own these animals if there's not an educational component to it, or you're part of a conservation organization. I don't think that you should have these animals as a personal pet in any way, any fashion. I don't agree.
So with class 1, you're not allowed. So I don't know if that applies to 4 feet and under, though.
I don't know.
Is there a class? Yeah, because I guess there's a class 1 4 feet and under too. So I don't know, because you're not allowed to have class 1 as a personal pet. You have to be exhibiting.
Yeah, but even so, there's no oversight. Again, so like for the federal permit, we have to show we did 12 glove programs or 400 viewing hours. It just says, what does it say? Just that you have public viewing? You know, there's no set number. So I know people who have their class 1 crocodilian, they don't do anything. They don't do any education. They don't do any outreach with it. They literally don't do anything with it, you know, and they just have it because they think it makes them look cool and, you know, like attention seeking stuff. And there's no educational component to them. So I don't think there's any oversight on that whatsoever. But either way, I mean, that's even for adults. But for the 4 feet and under thing, I think that would really help get rid of this like personal pet kind of ideology that comes with having, I have a pet alligator, you know? And so if you had it where you had to have an educational component, it would justify that. That's what I'm saying is the way that I would be okay with having that is if you did have that educational component as a requirement. So I have a baby alligator in my house that is under 4 feet because I go and do school programs, you know, and I
Are
do
you
this
talking about just Florida, or you want to see this not statewide, countrywide? Yeah, nationwide, nationwide.
I think, yes, it should be nationwide personally. You know, each state does their own thing, though.
Pennsylvania, we talked about this before. You don't need a permit to have alligators. I don't know about crocs. In
Yeah.
Texas, you don't need a permit for crocs.
We do have a lot of international people that do watch the video, so if you're not aware, in the U.S., each state will decide what they want to do separately. So, like, in some states, it's pretty strict. Florida is relatively strict compared to other states like Texas. It's a complete free-for-all.
New York is super, super strict.
There you go. Some of them, it's completely
And you
outright
actually
banned.
have to be, like, you know, educational and, like,
Yeah.
write a letter and justifying, like, just like what we had to do for the owl. We have to justify why it would be beneficial to our programs, and
Which
you
I think you should have to do. You know, I think I'm trying to get out of the sun a little bit. I think that's what you should have to do. But it just is, you know, it varies by state. So we'll just stick to Florida because that's where we are. You know, but it does vary by state. So yeah, I think you should have to have an educational component to be able to justify having that animal, especially knowing that that animal is probably going to have metabolic bone disease because of it. You know, and like it makes me really sad and upset. So the educational component. Now, the other big one is what happens to them when they get over 4 feet. And this is really the crux of the whole argument. This is what really, really bothers me about this whole thing is once it gets over 4 feet, that person is no longer allowed to have it anymore. So what are they going to do with it? They are supposed to find a licensed facility who will take it on. We get lots of requests for this. Okay, some people, oh, it died. Let it go. Throw it away.
Yeah, you don't have to show the body.
You don't have to show the body. So that
You just
I
say it
think
died.
is what's that?
You just say it died. Same with venomous snakes. You don't have to show the body. You just,
I think
yep,
that is
it died, and then you sell it to someone without a permit.
That's a huge hole in this system as far as the state goes. So once it's over 4 feet, I can just go let it go and say that it died, and that's it. End of story. I think that's a major problem. I think you should have to be able to provide evidence of every loss of class 1 or 2 animal by showing the body if it died, you know, whatever. I think that should absolutely be a state requirement. I think it's pretty ridiculous that it's not and allows people to let stuff go, you know? So yeah, that's a problem. But then finding a licensed facility who's going to take your animal. So we have people reach out to us pretty often.
Other states too now.
What's that?
From other states too. It's a
Yep.
big problem because all of these rescues are getting overrun with these MBD 4-foot alligators, 5-foot alligators. And I don't know of any other state off the top of my head that has a 4 feet and under rule. That's specifically for Florida, I think. But 4 feet is when people start not being able to handle the alligator. It's getting too big, and that's when they dump them into the Idaho River, or was it the Idaho River, or Ohio, or somewhere? Yeah, Ohio.
There's a bunch of cases of that, you know.
New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey. I mean,
so 4 feet is, you know, the legal requirement in this state, but as Gabby just said, it's also where it starts to get pretty dangerous, and a 4-foot animal can actually do some serious damage to you.
and a 4-foot animal in a fish tank is very dangerous because how are you moving that animal? How are you reaching in there? And they don't really make tanks that big, you know, like.
So you start running into problems.
Yep.
And then people are like, what do I do with this thing? Now it can actually rip fingers clean off. and I have no training experience, and I don't know what I'm doing, and it's actually dangerous now. I got to get rid of my alligator now that's 4 feet, or my crocodile, or whatever it is. So that is definitely a concern, and we have them reach out to us, and it becomes a Larry the Turtle situation where it's like, I want to help the animal, but now I have as a rescue that already has over 200 animals at the sanctuary. We now have like, do we really want to take on this animal that is horrifically disfigured
that
and
you
messed
can't
up?
even put with other alligators. That's
Okay.
the big thing. If
Hold
we
that thought,
could
hold
just
that thought.
put them in, sure, but
Hold that thought. Okay, that's an important one. But first, let's just talk about the health parts, and then we'll talk about socialization. So just the health part. For us, it is a massive burden to take on an animal that now has to take very specialized care and is also dangerous,
it's
Taking
not
on-
like a volunteer can just go and feed that alligator. It has to be me or you.
Yeah,
and most likely you.
Well, taking on like Larry the Turtle, who's a very disfigured turtle. Okay, that's a huge burden for us to take specialized care every day. We have over 200 animals to take care of, but it's just a turtle. We just pick it up and take care of it. Now it's a 4-foot alligator that like really doesn't like you and wants to bite you and can literally rip your fingers
And has
right off.
wonky teeth, so if it even sideswipes you, it's going to make you bleed.
Yep, and it's going to take years and years to even try to make any headway in recovery. So it's like
Saw the alligator. That's
Yeah.
like the best example. If you
Yep.
guys have been following us for a long time, Saw the alligator, who literally, her name is Saw because her teeth are so
Go out like a saw
outward.
blade.
It's like a saw. And Chris had to literally hold her by the neck and use tongs and shove meat down her throat for years.
couldn't even eat on her own. She was so disfigured from metabolic bone disease. That's how bad it gets. So disfigured that
I mean, you
animal
guys saw
cannot eat on its own.
the alligators from Pennsylvania and New York that have made the news. Like we see
Yeah,
we see this all the time.
The health part is a massive burden to whatever sanctuary or facility ends up taking on this pet gator.
I don't know if burden is the right word, but I understand what you're trying to say, and I
Yeah.
hope people are.
I
It's
don't
not
want
a.
to sound heartless because it is our purpose to help.
It
these
is
animals.
a very big undertaking that we are not able to.
Well,
we
here's
got
a
a
good
lot
way.
on our plate.
Here's a good way. Okay, when we have an alligator that came in because it got hit by a car and requires specialized care, that's a burden we're willing to take on to help that animal because it's nobody's fault. You know what I mean? When we have an alligator with lead poisoning, we're like, man, this is a huge mission to try to save this alligator. We're going to do our best to try to save him because nobody intentionally, did that to him. But then when somebody's pet, I'm like, that's your fault.
Right.
That's what pisses me off.
And
That's
then
what
you're
makes me
trying
mad.
to just be like, oh, it's your
Well,
problem
I want it
now.
as a pet, and it was like that person's selfish want to have it as a pet now has this animal horrifically disfigured, and we have to clean up the pieces and put all the time and money and risk investment into trying to save this animal. I'm okay to do that when it's injured outside of it is someone's fault, the person who hit it. It is somebody's fault why he ate the lead. It's still human fault, but it's not the same. It's not years and years and years of negligence of somebody choosing to be negligent.
It's also not our mission statement. Our mission statement is nuisance alligator. So there might be a rare case where we take on a pet alligator if needed or something, but we are saying no right now. Our mission is nuisance alligators. We're not trying to fill up on pet alligators or captive alligators,
Yeah.
And I think very quickly we are going to fill up on captive Niles and captive Morlets, because I cannot believe how many people have Niles and Morlets.
Yeah.
Like, I think we are going to get a point where we're going to have to start saying no to those too, because now we're at 4 Niles.
Yeah.
And potentially multiple Morlets coming in the next
Right.
couple months.
Yep.
So,
I'm shifting in the shade again. Yeah, it's a big concern, so like, okay, so the health problem is what I was getting at, so like we don't mind dealing with the health issues of an animal when it was not caused by years of negligence by a selfish person. That's what I'm trying to get at there. And so that's what I mean when I say it is a burden, because it like really makes you mad that someone else made this animal like this willingly for years, and now you have to pick up the pieces, and now you have to allocate more resources that could have went to an alligator from the wild that did need to be saved. That's what I'm really getting at. Like, I know I'm not articulating it very well, but like, it's just the idea of like, We want to help wild alligators that are, in need of being saved, not a pet animal that is in need of being saved because of years of neglect from somebody. That somebody should be the one paying for everything and making it so this animal can be saved, instead of being like, wow, I screwed this up royally, now I'm going to dump it in somebody else's lap to deal with. That's the feeling that I get out of that. So yeah, the health thing. So then to come back to what Gabby was saying though, the social problem. You can't take an alligator, well, let me back up. Their social skills are learned. This is really important. People think that these are just like purely instinctual, mindless animals. They are not. They're intelligent and they learn, and their social skills have to be learned over time. They are not instinctual. So what I mean by that is when we have an alligator that is raised by itself in a fish tank, it does not know how to be an alligator. And I don't mean just like hunting, eating. No, I mean like it doesn't know how to be around other gators. When you have one that's grown up its entire life inside of a fish tank and then you stick it in with other alligators, I've seen this. They get so stressed out by being around other gators that they've never seen their own kind before. They get so stressed by it, they can literally die of the stress. Gabby's seen this too,
Yeah.
right? Do you want to tell that? Do you want to tell it vaguely?
Yeah.
Well, we don't want to.
I don't even know how the hell that was legal, honestly. We know someone who did education in New York, whatever. I don't even think the facility exists anymore, honestly. And this thing was so messed up. Living in a bathtub for, I think, like 11 years or something ridiculous like that. It was actually the first alligator that I've ever interacted with. And then I moved to Florida. We lost contact, and we heard through the grapevine that a couple years later, the alligator made its way to Florida, and this facility said that they would take it in, and yeah, the person has like pictures with this alligator in like the Everglades National Park. I'm like, what? How are you? Like, what? I don't think any of that was legal, but
that's definitely illegal.
Anyway, the alligator did die, unfortunately, because they threw it in with a bunch of other alligators. So.
And it doesn't know what to do, So we've seen this happen independently multiple times, where you have an alligator that grew up in solitary. Imagine a person, same thing. It's just like a person, Throw out the entire idea that these are strictly instinctual animals and they'll just be fine, right? No, imagine it just like you. So if he's never seen another alligator, if you've never seen another human before, you live inside of a glass box, and then you're suddenly put in with other humans, you don't know what to do, and they freak out and they die from the stress. Or they become very aggressive, and they are then a threat to the other alligators. This is the other reason why we don't want to put random crocodilians together that came, that lived in solitary, is because then once you put them together, sometimes they attack each other. Normally for wild alligators, I've never had a problem putting a random female in with a big male. As you see here, I've never had a problem with that with wild gators, but with captive alligators, I know of the larger one killing a big male killing a smaller female. I've never, in 20 years of doing this with wild alligators, I've never had the male kill the female or even try to. But with the captive alligators that are raised in captivity, they don't even know what to do. So they see it as a threat and they'll kill her. It's crazy. So for a facility taking on these gators once they're over 4 feet, again, it's just a major pain, because we're like, now we have to put them in by themselves and create an entire enclosure just for that animal, because it can't go with the other animals because it doesn't have any social skills whatsoever.
When that money could be going towards animals like Tadpole, who needs to be alone, potentially. We don't actually know. She might be able to eventually, go with bigger gators, but like Gaston. Gaston probably needs to be alone forever, unless we get him a really nice girlfriend or another floaty alligator. But so then you're taking away resources from that animal because somebody wanted to, have it as a pet.
Yep.
And I understand things happen and people, like have alligators for like 30, 40 years, and then they're sick, they're getting older, they can't handle it. Like, I get it. But I feel like that's not the case most of the time. It's just people on a whim buying them in like the reptile expo and have them for like 2 years and like, oh, well, I don't want it anymore.
Yep.
Or it's too big and now I'm going to trade it for a smaller one.
Yeah, so trying to put them together socially doesn't work out very well a lot of the time, So just kind of bring all that back together. We know people here in Florida that have this 4 feet and under permit and have an alligator in their little tiny apartment, or a caiman or a crocodile in their little tiny apartment, and I'm like, what are you gonna do when it gets big? Oh, just give it to somebody else. then it's their problem. Then they have to deal with the metabolic bone disease that you cause. They have to deal with the lack of social skills that you cause for this animal. They have to deal with the health issues that you cause for this animal, the housing issues because it has to be alone. You know, like all this kind of stuff.
Because you want it to be cool and say that you have a pet crocodile.
You know, yeah,
oh, you're
it's
just
like,
so you're just
it's
so unique.
frustrating. And like, you know, the animal is the one who ends up suffering with health issues and social issues and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, oh my, why is this a thing? Why is this allowed in Florida? Why do we have a 4 feet and under permit? The only justification I can see for this 4 feet and under permit is, again, if you're doing education and you have to prove how many hours of education you do, not just, I do education. Okay, check, box is done. No oversight as to whether or not you actually did it.
Well, FWC has so much oversight and overregulation on the stupidest things that don't make sense. And then there's just like these, like the Delta thing. Let's talk about the, you know, how you can just fly them on Delta without a permit, but our friend can't transport an alligator for us.
Yeah, it's
like, how is
because
that?
We're way up here, you know, so most of our contacts are down in South Florida. Like, you guys know George, you know, I've worked with George for years. He works with alligators every day down there in South Florida. I trained him how to handle alligators, and he filled my shoes when I came up here. So he's doing everything down there now, but he doesn't have his permit, so he can't transport an alligator for us up here. He can only work at a facility that has their permit and bring it to a facility, or, you know, the person transporting has to have the license. But if you want to ship it, you can then put it in a box and ship it, and then everybody through Delta, you know, flights, whatever, they can all handle the box. But this guy can't, even though he works with them every day. In the same way, you could literally have it boxed up at the licensed facility and contained in the exact same methodology you would use.
Ship it through what, like UPS?
Yeah, they ship it through airlines, like literally. So we could box it up exactly the same way you would ship it, but he's not allowed to drive it up here, even though he works with alligators every day, but the airline people are. I'm like, what? Like, what? How does that make any sense? You know? I mean, that's not really... I don't know. I don't know what to say. That it's just a weird situation, you know.
I know this is like totally random, but I'm still so annoyed and angry at the red-eared slider situation.
Yeah. So we're
like,
not allowed to have red-eared sliders.
That's it's a what is it? Is it conditional?
Species special concern?
I don't know if it's a conditional or prohibited.
Conditional.
Whatever. Either way, I mean, we can get our permit. We are going to get our permit. But I applied. We have the enclosure. Blah blah blah. And they're like, "Well, are you exhibiting?" Not yet, but we're going to, and you're literally begging people to get their license because there are so many red-eared sliders and literally not a single facility in Florida taking them. So then we try to help you guys and get our permit, but you're not exhibiting, so no. Well, okay, then stop complaining. Like, it's just, it's insane.
Yeah.
It's insane. Like, I don't want a bunch of red-eared sliders. Like, they are... I mean, turtles in general, aquatic turtles are dirty. It's more work for us, but there's a need for it. So we want to help out. We want to help the pet owners and the turtles and, you know, the state. And they're fighting us every step of the way.
Yeah.
Like, how does that make sense?
Look, if you want to make a separate video talking about how many dumb decisions are made on Florida wildlife laws, that'll be a couple hours long of a video. There are so many things in the whole wildlife sector about like the laws that are just, they do not make any sense. They're completely backwards. It's really, really dumb. They're inefficient. Like, that's a separate thing we could talk about for a very long time.
Like how you can go and literally chop the head of a rattlesnake off, and that's legal.
Yeah.
I mean, that might technically fall under animal cruelty.
Well,
you're allowed to kill it on your property, but if you move it on your property alive, that's illegal.
No, well, in the national park, in Everglades National Park, you see all the time. You can drive your car, you can see an endangered eastern indigo snake. You can swerve in the other lane, run it over, and then keep on driving. Nobody cares, nothing happens. But if you stop and you touch that indigo snake, take pictures of it, and then let it go on its way,
You're a
boom,
felon.
You're in big trouble. You know. Again, we could literally go on and on about this one.
Okay.
And I think they're stupid. There's a lot of really dumb rules, and I think it does deserve to be changed. But those are dumb rules that are just annoying. I think this 4 feet and under rule needs to be changed because it is really creating issues and bad lives for the animals. That's why this one irritates me so much. is it is causing a lot of damage to animals that is completely preventable. And I don't see what is the good in this law. Like, what is the good in having
I
this?
do think that it is more prevalent in other states than Florida, though. Like, I'm not saying it's not a problem in Florida, but I do think a majority of the abuse happening is in colder states.
It does. There's a woodpecker up there.
What do you think?
Well, yeah, but again, that's why I think it should be nationwide. But we are talking about the Florida 4 feet and under ruling just because we have that here. Other states don't even have that. You know, it's just that once they're hitting the 4 feet mark is when they've just become dangerous. So coincidentally, that's when they're also trying to move the animals too, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it just, I mean, obviously I have a big problem with the entire pet industry for crocodilians, and that's one I think that should be completely banned.
It's
in general.
It's
Like,
so hard when we get calls like, hey, I'm from New York. I want to donate my 4-foot alligator to your sanctuary.
all
It's
the
like,
time.
It's so hard not to be annoyed. It's
Yeah.
so hard and just not to.
Why do you have a pet alligator? Why do you
Right,
think that's
in
a
New
good
York, like, which is
Well-
illegal, by the way, and we can't even take it because it's illegal. So, but
And I preach this stuff constantly, and I've been working in this field for 20 years. I preach this stuff constantly, and then I have one of my videos go viral, and I've done many videos discussing this, and I have one video go viral where I don't discuss it, and everybody's like, I want to buy an alligator as a pet because of you. Don't you think, Chris, that you are the cause of this problem? You make them look so cute and cuddly. You're the reason why people want pet alligators. And I'm like, I just start losing my mind. Like, you can't win.
anyone that follows us knows our stance on, like, captive alligators and stuff like
I
that.
would hope so, but like, yeah, I get thrown in as the person creating this problem, and I'm like, I'm trying so hard to stop this problem, and I try to educate, but the educational videos don't go viral. Like, what do you want?
Or recently we had a few facilities reach out to us about like special needs baby alligators. They're like, but we want to keep it until it's 4 feet, and then can you take it? It's like, no, we can take it now while it's young, and we can take care of it. We can train it from a baby. We can mitigate metabolic bone disease. We can socialize it. But no, you're not going to keep it for 3 years, mess it up, and then, oh, it's too big, your problem now. Like, we're not doing that, you
Yeah.
know? So,
Well, again, because Florida does have a 4 foot and under law, that's why I want this video to be more about that specifically, to educate people about that, and that we should change that and get rid of that.
it's not just private people, it's facilities too, especially like the tourist traps that do like photos with the baby alligators and stuff.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point too, is that as far as housing them goes, so it's an awkward size. So when they are small, you can keep them, you shouldn't, but you can keep them in fish tanks. You can keep them in small indoor enclosures, whatever, in tubs and stuff like that. Like, it's easy to keep a small one, right? And then for the big guys, obviously we got to build something big for them. But there's this awkward size between, 4 to like 6, 7 feet, where it's like, they're not big enough to go with other big ones, but they're definitely too big to be in these smaller enclosures. So like, we're gonna have to build some intermediate size enclosures, and it's like, well, what most places call them are grow out pens, So we, Gabby and I have been talking about this, about building some smaller enclosures specifically for that size class. So, which we're able to do.
Like Trapjaw, he's an awkward size,
Yeah.
and we probably wouldn't take him if he didn't need a little bit of assistance, just because it's an awkward size and he is not an ideal enclosure for our standards right
Yeah.
now. He's fine, but like, we are just trying to really do good enclosures for these animals, and it just makes me upset that we even have like Stallone in a temporary, but Stallone would literally be dead if he wasn't here. So
Well,
it's,
the sanctuary's only been here a year and a half. Like,
yeah, we're doing our
we have
best.
come so far in a year and a half. It's absolutely amazing, but we're not where we want to be yet.
And we're just normal people. We keep saying this. Like, a lot of these other people that you see, and dude, good for them, but like, their parents have a lot of money. They don't have a lot of money. Their parents have a lot of money. So they're able to do a lot of things and buy a lot of cool animals. And we are over here trying to pick up the pieces and trying to help animals. And we are just normal people on a
that are not rich.
normal salary, doing our best.
You mean
And
salary.
I don't even, yeah.
Yeah. Just to because Gabby mentioned it, and I have comments about this a lot. How do you afford all this? Blah, blah, blah. Did you come from a rich background? Guys, I literally grew up below the poverty line. Like, technically, literally below the poverty line. You know, my parents are divorced. I love both of my parents, but I grew up with my mom, and my mom was in school and also working and studying at the same time. And like, I was a latchkey kid at elementary school. I'd literally like wake up, nobody's there, make my own breakfast in elementary school, pedal my little bike to school, go to school all day, come home, nobody's home again, because my mom would have to be up early for work and then do classes at night, and she'd have food in the fridge I would heat up on my own. Elementary school. You know, like, that's why I'm very independent, and that's why I'm very motivated to be self-made, because I grew up with nothing, you know. And like, and I don't want to get on the soapbox about like, woe is me, poor. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is, like, I have what I have because I earned it and I made it this way, you know. And I literally have this facility that we're doing right here. I paid majority of it, almost all of it, out of my pocket, of my savings, that was built with blood, literally blood and sweat, of being a professional alligator wrestler for the last 20 years. You know, so that's why we have this, that's how we have this, and that's also why I'm trying to do everything the right way, you know, because this is not just me throwing away somebody else's money that I got from mommy and daddy. This is me earning this and making it work, you know.
So we're doing our best, you know.
Yeah, but to circle that back, not just me ranting about that, is when it comes to building enclosures, I'm like, oh my God, that is so much money. You know, every build out is like at least $10,000-$20,000. And I'm just like, oh my God. Like, that amount of money has very significant value to me because I grew up poor, you know? And it's not like somebody else were like, oh yeah, we spent $100,000 on this, but what do I care? It's my parents' money. You know what I mean? Like, no, to me, it's like, that's $10,000. You know how many alligator wrestling shows that was? And you know how many times I almost got killed to make that money? You know, so for me, it's just like, oh my God, you know? But anyways, what I want to do, talking about all that, to bring all that together, is communal alligator pond. We still want to do that. That we want to do one part of it for adults, and we do want to make a communal gator pond area that will be for this awkward size, this 4 foot to like 6-7 foot size. So we could put all those jokers in there together, and then as they grow up and get bigger, we'll have to check, you know, like every year we'll do a catch up, and we will catch up everybody who's getting too big for that size class, and move them next door into the adult communal alligator pond. You know, that's one of my goals, is to do those two separate ones. And then we're also gonna have to probably do a baby gator alley area, you know, where we have like for the really little guys, like tadpole. Yeah, I mean, tadpole's probably gonna have to have their own permanent smaller enclosure, but thankfully with nuisance gators, if it's under 4 feet, you can release them back out in the wild, and that's what we try to do. So I don't think we're going to be inundated with baby alligators, you know.
Yeah, tadpole's kind of like a rare one-off.
Yeah, so I don't think we're going to have a large area for small gators like that under 4 feet, but we will have to have a large area for the the 4 to 7, and then another large area for adult alligators. And so that's all stuff that is in our plans right now for those large communal ponds we have back there. We just got to figure out how to keep it. So then we come to the thing, well, we take on crocodiles, right, that are captive crocs, so why aren't we taking on captive alligators, you know? So how do you want to, you were just saying it, Gabby.
I mean, there are just so many captive alligators, and right now we're focusing on, you know, nuisance alligators. And if our mission statement was like rescuing American crocodiles, which you can't really do, and it's nuisance? Like super regulated. Yeah. Okay. Like nuisance, let's say, you know, all of a sudden the population rises and there's a million American crocodiles.
I would love to be able to take on nuisance American crocs.
I know.
It's just, it is very weird, guys, the way the system works. And like, if somebody, okay, so if somebody wanted to give us their American crocodile, we have the permits, we can take it. But as far as taking on a nuisance American crocodile, there's like a waiting list and some weird priority.
And I think you got to know the right people in
it's like a different system of prioritization on who gets those. And I don't know how that works.
So it would be super cool, but
I don't even know how to explain it because I don't understand it. We're trying to figure it out ourselves. So I would love to be able to take on the nuisance American crocodiles.
I think it's nepotism a lot. Like, honestly, so and like the zoos that have a lot of money.
I was going to say that.
Yeah, I think it is. So too. Anyway, but what I'm saying is, like, if we had request for hundreds of nuisance crocodiles, we would not be taking captive crocodiles. That's kind of like a one-off thing. And also, like, crocodiles are super cool, and how amazing is it to be able to house crocs and gators at a crocodilian sanctuary? So it's a one-off thing. It's not like we're getting calls every single day about crocs like we are about alligators. And if that ever happens, then we're gonna have to start saying no to crocs as well. But it's kind of like a one-off thing.
Well, or what, again, we are in basically our infancy here at the sanctuary. We're pretty new, a year and a half. We've come very far in that time, but we're nowhere near where I want us to be. And so I think in time, if there is enough of a need for placement for Niles and morlets and whatnot, that we could build a communal pond for them.
That would be super cool.
If they could be socialized. That's the other problem, again, we run into is, a lot of these animals are growing up with no socialization skills. So that's something we're gonna have to figure out.
And you guys already saw Cadmus and Lyra, who were raised together for 7 years, and he's already trying to kill her. So there's,
Well, okay, that also brings up a good point about that awkward size class, is that size class is under sexual maturity. And so if they're not sexually mature, they're not likely to see the value in the other one. It's just it's a competitor, So like, obviously, he likes her because it's a female. He's sexually mature. They're interested in each other. So they're perfect. Boom, put together, no issue whatsoever. But even with those ones that were together, they're not sexually mature. So he's not seeing her as a mate. He's seeing her as a competitor or a possible threat, so he wants to kick her out. So that's the other thing that makes that size class so obnoxious to house, is like they don't care about each other yet. They're not interested in one another yet. So they just want to fight, so it just makes it more difficult to house them. But that's something we're going to have to figure out, and
and again, like Chris keeps saying, we're still in our infancy stage. So who knows, in 15 years, if we are just, as a sanctuary, we have grown so much and we have 50 staff members and unlimited funds, maybe we'll take in captive alligators. Who knows? But what we're saying is
there's also other places that do that
specifically. Right, with a lot more money. So
yeah. Well, that's why we also kind of feel okay to be able to say no,
because we send everybody there.
Yeah, exactly. We know there's someone else doing it, so we're like, they handle the pet gator thing. We don't have to do it. We're doing the nuisance gator thing. And that's a nice division, to help out the animals.
Right.
If that wasn't there, then I would feel much more responsibility to take them on. I think that's an important point to make, is that we don't feel that much responsibility towards the pet gator thing because there is someone else who is specializing in that. So it allows us to specialize more in the nuisance gator problem.
Right. And there's also a rescue in Michigan that takes in, I think Colorado Gator Farm also takes in pet. So there are other places. It's not like we are the only one doing it. So like it needs to come here. Because that's a lot of pressure, because that's kind of how I feel about the dying reptiles. Like, there's literally no one else. And sulcata tortoises right now, actually.
Oh my God.
Like, what are we going to do about that?
I don't know, man.
It makes me, and this is like a call to action. If you see other YouTubers and breeders breeding sulcata tortoises, boycott them. Literally.
Call them out. A lot of them are just ignorant.
Call them out.
If you're someone who is all about your online presence, whether you're doing it for money or attention or whatever, you're listening to your audience to some degree. So like, they need to know that people don't want to see that, so like, you got to call them out, and you can do it nicely. You don't have to be, be a jerk about it, but you can be like, hey, look, that's not ethical, it's not okay, and I don't want to see that.
It is a huge problem, guys. I can't even explain it to you. If my phone was not dead, I would literally go on the Pet Amnesty emails right now and show you the scrolling hundreds and hundreds of this sulcata needs a home, this sulcata needs a home. Then the people reaching out to us about their sulcatas, big sulcatas, small sulcatas, and
I want to help, but it's too cold up here.
Well, and look at Arizona. The Herpetological Society in Arizona has like Phoenix. 200 sulcata tortoises, and then people crap on them because their enclosure. Oh, well, their enclosure is too small for that many.
What else are they gonna do?
What else? Like, that's the problem. Because if we start taking all of them, there's no way we can offer what Jumanji has. So then they're all going to go in one enclosure. Then they're going to fight. Then it's not going to be ideal. So there's no winning anyway.
Yeah.
The problem with sulcatas is they are territorial. They dig. We are so lucky with Jumanji. Yes, not cold tolerant.
I don't think we're lucky with Jumanji. He dug where he was before. I think, for anybody watching us sulcata, I think one of our really good tricks there is that we made his house very low, barely, his house is barely taller than the top of his shell. So when he goes in there, he feels secure and safe, and he doesn't feel the need to dig. That, I think, is the key there, because where he was before us,
Yeah, he was flipping things.
he almost dug out the entire foundation underneath a shed and had it collapsing in a sinkhole.
Yeah,
okay?
that's true.
He does dig. It's just that we really made his house very well. But anyways, the sulcata thing, like, I want to help. I want to. We've got the acreage here. I would love to just fence off a large area of land and just boom, that's your sulcata area. Throw them all in there.
And then what happens in the winter?
And that's why we don't. They are all going to die in the winter. We have to have Jumanji as a heated hide. Maybe if we have enough money, eventually we could build a large sulcata area with a large heated hide
Like
area for
barn.
them to go into.
And staff, Chris, because we are at the point where me and you cannot do this alone anymore. And even with like the volunteers we have, like they're amazing, but we are at the point, and it's only going to get worse once we start doing tours, and once we're USDA, and once we have more laws, and once we have more federal migratory birds that we need to do programs with. It's only gonna get worse.
Yeah, it's.
So we're
expanding.
We're saying no a lot more than we're saying yes,
Yeah.
and it's and that's what like eats me up inside, is like people, especially when they have supported and donated, and they're like, hi, I love you, we donate all the time, but now I need you to take my sulcata. I'm getting old. I've had it for 30 years and I can't. And I also can't even send them anywhere else or give them any recommendations because literally nobody is taking in sulcatas.
It makes me like think, man, if I won the lottery, I would literally just buy a couple acres down south and just make a sulcata area just for rescue sulcatas, you know? Down there where they're okay, you know, the temperature. But up here, like on this property, we just, it's too cold for them, you know? I mean, we already have enough of a nightmare every time it gets cold of just trying to haul everybody in and plug everything in and heat the ones that we can't move and move the ones that we can.
I just think it's so disgusting that people are still breeding them, because you know what that tells me? That you literally do not care about the well-being of those animals.
Yeah.
That's what you're telling me, because there is no shortage of sulcatas. Like, people are giving them away for free, huge ones for free. So
Well, that's one that I wish had an acreage requirement, you know, like we're talking about permanent stuff.
I know.
Like, I really hate over-regulation, and I know we're gonna have people on here who are like, there should be no regulation, do whatever you want. And I'm like, no, there needs to be some common sense regulation. You know, it doesn't need to be prohibitive like legislation, but like,
sulcatas are walking free every day on Facebook. I found the sulcata, found the sulcata. I am shocked that there's no regulation,
yeah, well,
because they're constantly breaking out.
yeah, there needs to be some regulation on sulcatas. There needs to be like an acreage regulation to be able to own it, and
If
caging regulation.
People that are watching that don't understand what a sulcata is, can you?
Jumanji.
So-
it's a friggin' 200-pound bulldozer.
It is the third largest tortoise species in the world.
Yeah.
They are big,
massive.
and they dig,
And they dig.
and they fight.
And, well, they're territorial, and they dig, and they literally just bam, 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 till they get through a fence. And they break right through fences, or they dig under fences. They dig under houses. They
It's
can make
bad. They're horrible pets. Why do we have these?
They're so strong.
Why would anybody want
Well,
this as
they're
a pet?
they're very determined, and they're very strong. So they just sit there and dig these massive holes against people's houses and cause major problems. And they're like, I can't keep this thing anymore. And the bigger it gets, the stronger it gets. And they dig under your fence, or they plow through your fence, and like, it's crazy. So like,
I
it's a
don't-
big problem.
I don't know what the solution is there either, because you want to help, but then you know if you do help, you're going to get people saying, well, oh, you're cohabiting males and females and this, and that's not big enough. And like,
Yeah.
remember the lady that had the sulcata rescue, and we drove like 5 hours away to help place 2 sulcatas out of the kindness of our heart, and she was complaining that Jumanji's enclosure is not big enough. Like, oh, so can you take him? Oh no, I'm getting too old. I actually can't even take more. So okay, so then why are you complaining?
Yeah,
What do you
that-
want us to do?
That made me really mad. That lady, yeah, she was not nice.
We have a lot of mutual friends with her too.
Yeah.
She was a nasty old lady. I don't care.
I won't say anything else on that. But yeah, just not friendly. But anyways, yeah, I just think, I don't know. I'm of the opinion of like having accountability for animals, you know, and the animals' welfare. And like, I don't want over-regulation, you know, again, but like, I think that there should be some basal regulation on like, if you want to get a sulcata tortoise, okay, where did it go? Oh, it got out. Oh, it got out, then you're not ever allowed to have another one. Like, you know what I mean? Or I don't know, not that bad, but like just something that helps on keeping tabs on these animals so that we know that they're well taken care of and that you're actually trying, and providing proper housing and caging. And to bring it back to what we're, the point of this video is that 4 feet and under thing. Like, that should be abolished. That should be gone. Like, you should, what?
Sorry, this is also why we no longer really go to reptile expos, because there are so many animals that people can just buy in a whim. Like, it's exciting when you go and you're like, oh my gosh, all these reptiles that I've never seen before, and you can't really get them in pet stores. And like, dude, when I was living in New York and I was in middle school and high school, I was obsessed with reptile expos, and I am definitely guilty of, on a whim, purchasing animals like savanna monitors that I had absolutely no business owning when I'm living in New York in my parents' house. Like, I've done it before, and that's why we are trying now, like, on the other side of things, to like educate people. And I think we're all kind of guilty, especially when we're younger, just kind of getting things on a whim because it's exciting.
And that's why I think there should be regulation that prevents that.
Yeah.
Like, if you have an animal that is, again, potentially dangerous or destructive enough to easily escape, there should be some level of regulation. Now, I don't think it should be banning. I don't like bans, and I don't like regulation that is so prohibitive that you can't even possibly get it, but like, I think there should be some low level regulation that makes it so you can't get things on a whim, that you show that you have the ability to take care of it, the space to take care of it, and then also providing the proper habitat and lighting and etc. And if you can't, so there's not enough staff on FWCA to show up at everybody's house who has a sulcata and check and see if they're providing proper housing. It's just not feasible.
They can't even check people with Class 3 licenses, is what officers have told us. They barely have enough people to check the Class 1 and 2, which requires an inspection every 6 months. So
I don't know, in the day, in this time of social media and whatnot, it is, everybody posts everything, so it's pretty easy to be able to check up on it. Maybe you do it via Zoom. That's an easy way to do it. The state could literally look into that. That way you could do all of your check-ins on Zoom and be like, okay, show me your area, your habitat. Obviously, that's not going to be like perfect, but it would be good enough to give them a decent idea of what you have. It's not the same as an in-person inspection. It'd be easy to get around it, but it's something, and like, I think that would be a good move by the state is to have, check-ins for these Class 3 animals, on Zoom. I think that's a good idea. That would help out significantly.
Yeah, they would never do that. They're already so backed up on like paperwork. Literally, it took us 90 days to the day to get approved for like our crocodilian license when we already had all the hours, and we were literally just transferring from one place to another, already had the inspection. All they had to do was give a little check, and we had to wait 90 days.
He agrees with me.
Yeah, everything is just such a mess. And then you get the crazy people that no animal should ever be in captivity, and like, that's not what we're saying at all. And I'm part of like these fennec fox owner groups and these Coatimundi groups, and I can't tell you just like how sad it makes me to see people have these animals and they are keeping them in like bare minimum, like, literally ferret nation cages is like the standard for a fennec, or like a 5x5 pen for like a coati. And I'm not against owning exotic animals in like regards to, if you understand that in a year this animal might not be friendly and you still need to take care of it and love it and give it the best care and build it a big enclosure and just let it be, that's fine. But when you have like a fennec fox and you're trying to have it like in your house like a cat, and it's not friendly, so now I don't want it anymore, or now it just is going to suffer in a tiny cage because it's mean, that's what I don't like. And that is what most people do. They don't unconditionally love the animal and like, oh well, it's mean, but I am gonna give it the best life. Like Lily, you guys see how mean Lily is, and we just let her do her thing and she can just exist, and that's kind of like the purpose of our sanctuary. The animals can just exist. But when you're buying a pet like that and spending thousands of dollars on an exotic animal, if it's not nice, people get disappointed and then they don't want it anymore. And that's where we come in, and we're happy to help where we can. But it definitely, it makes me sad. It does.
Yeah, I think having, like you said, never gonna do it. But having like Zoom check-ins for all these different kinds of animals, like, it's a really good move. And it just makes sure you're doing the bare minimum, you know? Like, I don't know. I mean, if we want to talk about captive animal ethics, that's a separate video that'll go on for hours, you know? But I don't know. Did you have any other thoughts on the 4 feet and under? Do you think that we hit everything that we've talked about?
Yeah, I think so. I just, you know, and I keep saying this in like every video, but I'm afraid that people that don't do rescue really don't understand. And they're like, you signed up for this and you're supposed to be patient and this and that. And the only reason that rescues exist is because basically we're here to, like, in a nice way, clean up other people's messes. That's the whole reason, you know, like a lot of these animals are messed up because of people. So even though we love what we do, we wish we didn't have to do it. We wish there was like no need for, you know, rescue. And it does, we are allowed to be frustrated with people. I mean, I never get frustrated with the animals. It's always the people. Like, why did you do this? Why did you get this? Why did you wait so long? It's, you know, like, we love what we do and this is a dream, but there's just some things that are like, like, why? Why do you have a pet alligator? Why do you have a, you know, 15 baby sulcata tortoises that you wanted your tortoise to experience motherhood and now you want us to date? Like, why, you know?
Well, here's one that I wanted to bring up on this topic of like the 4 feet and under thing is people always bring up dwarf caiman, because that's the smallest crocodilian species and they do stay small, and people think because they're small they're manageable. I have seen some dwarf caiman that are really chill. I've seen the majority of them are insanely fast and psychotic. Okay?
They are not nice animals.
So, because that's what everybody always says when I talk about this kind of thing. What about dwarf caiman? You know, everybody brings it back, but they stay small. It's a perfect pet, right? It stays small. And I'm like, dude, do you know how mean those things can be? Now, sometimes, some of them are really chill. And if you know how to handle crocodilians, you know, you can make them, if you know how to train, you know, you can get them to be nice and manageable and habituated. But, like, most people don't. Most people don't know how to do that. And they have some super nasty dwarf caiman that are just, like, a dwarf caiman, if you don't know, they are, they're native to South America, and, like, they're usually around 4 to 5 feet at max size. Occasionally they do get bigger than that, but like, they are lightning fast. They're so fast. And like, even when you're an experienced, good handler, like, it is so hard to even, I've caught a lot of them down in the Amazon. There goes Akala. He's being crazy. But you know, I've caught a lot of them down in the Amazon, and like, I'll catch them with somebody and like, Ocala.
They're barking at our volunteer.
Yeah, I'll catch them and people are like, dude, why are you holding it like so tight? And they're like, are you scared of that little thing? And I'm like, you don't understand like how fast these things are and like how dangerous they actually are to handle. They're not dangerous in the idea of like he's gonna creep up and attack you, but like when you're trying to handle one, like handling like a 4-foot mean dwarf caiman, like it's really hard. It is easier to handle an 8-foot alligator. Like, they're so fast and like snappy, and they could be so mean. Like, I cannot emphasize enough. So like, that's what everybody's like, oh, that's the perfect size one for a pet. And I'm like, you have no idea what you're talking about.
Be careful with him.
Oh, he's getting close. He's creeping. He's creeping.
He wants food. It's too cold. You can't eat right now.
You had enough yesterday.
It's gonna be cold tonight.
You're good. You're done. You are cut off, sir. But yeah, so that's my take on dwarf caiman, because everybody says that, and they're like, oh, but what if it's a nice one? And I'm like, what if it's not?
Well, again, it comes back to 99.9% of people have not great enclosures. That's really what it comes down to. I don't think a fish tank is appropriate for a crocodilian.
Oh, you can't be sitting up in my lap here, all right? You gotta relax. But yeah, I don't know. That is always the caveat that people think it is. That they're like, oh, but if it's a dwarf caiman, it's fine because it's small enough, you know, and it's not dangerous. And I'm like, you know, a dwarf caiman is not trying to eat you like a 10-foot alligator is. But a dwarf caiman will absolutely remove fingers in chunks, and I mean big chunks. Like if you get grabbed by a mean 4-foot dwarf caiman, there's a chance it's going to rip off multiple fingers in one swipe. Like, I'm not saying it's going to kill you, you know, but it's definitely maim worthy, you know. So like, yeah, I don't recommend those, absolutely not. And they again suffer metabolic bone disease, you know, same thing. So not only is it just like, you know, a safety issue, it's the ethics, you know, the animal's health is at risk there, and you know, they do get over 4 feet too. So what are you going to do with it, you know? So we'll go ahead and wrap up this video. We've been going on and on for a while, and I know this is not really the topic that most people are interested in, but I think it's an important topic to discuss, and I think it's probably only going to be our hardcore fans that actually watch this video to the end. Okay, I think it's probably a pretty boring video if you're not really in this field, you know, so I know it's kind of boring, but I do think it's important to discuss, and I also want to remind everybody these are just our personal opinions on the matter from our experience in this field, and that, you know, maybe our opinions will change with time as well, you know, but I think those are some pretty well-grounded concerns that we have, and not everybody's going to agree with us, and that's okay if you don't. We do ask that if you disagree, you do it respectfully, you know, and not get too angry or crazy, and that, you know, realize we're not trying to attack anybody over this either, but
we're just trying to advocate for the animals.
Yeah. Well, it is the irony that my content working with crocodilians is exactly the kind of content that will attract the kind of people who want pet crocodilians.
I know, and then they name them after our crocodilians.
Yes.
Like, no. This is Big Mac the caiman. This is Aquila the other crocodile. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Please
So
don't
it's kind of like
that.
It's kind of the irony of like, oh my god, like, you know. So that's why we want to voice these opinions and tell people like these animals are not pets. And like, oh, but you talk to him like it's a big baby, and I'm like, because I want to garner appreciation for the animal and have the other side of the spectrum that hate these animals and want them all killed and think they're mindless killing machines.
Joe Rogan.
We are
looking at you, Joe Rogan.
So frustrating. Those are the kind of people that we're trying to reach by showing that they are cute. And I do baby talk. Well, I baby talk everything, by the way. That's just who I am. I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for me and for him, because that's how I like to talk to animals.
We should start a whole series of just reels. Day 1 of trying to get Joe Rogan's attention. Hey, Big Mac. Hey. Like day 2 of trying to get Joe Rogan's attention, and just, you know.
Yeah. Well, the reason she says that is because every time Rogan talks about alligators, he's like,
he hates them.
He's like, he literally, I'm not going to exactly quote it because we try to be a kid-friendly channel, but he says, I effing hate those things. Whenever I see anything Gator leather, I purposefully buy it because I know it means it made one of those die, you know?
And he
like,
is like the most influential person in the world.
Yeah, the most
and
influential
he's like
person in the world
millions of
at the
people that
moment.
he hates alligators.
Specifically hates alligators. Specifically advocates for killing alligators.
So.
You know, and like, it's frustrating because like, otherwise, like, I love listening to like the Rogan podcast about UFOs. Like, oh my god, I love those. You know, I love the UFO topic, and so like I listen to everything he does about UFOs. Like, I love that kind of stuff. And I have quite a few friends who have been on his podcast, and we have mutual friends and whatnot, and everybody's like, Chris, we got to get you on Joe Rogan, like, because he likes to talk about animals a lot. So everybody's like, we got to get you on there. He'd love to talk to you. And I'm like, I think I'm the last person he wants to talk to because he hates alligators.
Yeah.
And he makes it very clear that he hates alligators. So
yeah.
I would love to get on there and talk to him about alligators and try to educate him.
Because one of them, like, as a child, like, ate his neighbor's dog, right? And it was traumatic.
Yeah, when he was a kid, he lived in Orlando, and he said that he saw a neighbor's dog get eaten by an alligator, so now they're monsters.
It sounds like it's the neighbor's fault.
And I'm like, bro, you love MMA. What if I told you when I was a kid, hypothetically, this is not real, but let's say when I was a kid, I watched an MMA fighter beat up some poor lady because he was also a drunk. I hate MMA fighters. Do you know how stupid that is? Like, it's just so dumb. Like, oh, because an alligator did what an alligator does at a young age, you saw that, and now you hate these animals and they're monsters? You know, like, it's so frustrating.
So anyway, that's the other reason we do these videos.
Yes, yeah. So, but yeah.
To just show you guys how chill and how amazing they are.
Yeah, we want to show the other side of the spectrum of people who hate these animals, how they are actually not mindless killing machines. They're not monsters. They're intelligent animals, and if you know how to work with them and train them, I mean, I'm literally sitting here having an hour-long conversation next to a 10'2" alligator that was in the wild 6 months ago. Who would think that's possible? To literally sit next to him. He's not well fed. We didn't just feed him. He's just been chilling here for the last hour. He kind of wanted to bite me for a minute there.
And how cool is it for like the people who have been following since the day we got him to see the progression? And like even our new subscribers, there will be a chance for you, multiple chances where you're going to see day 1, day 2, month 1, month 2, you know, like.
But just realize 6 months ago or 8 months ago now, whatever,
something like that,
less than a year ago, that animal was in the wild. And then here we are sitting right next to a 10-foot alligator having an hour-long conversation without being attacked, you know, like he's just chilling, he's just hanging out with us, you know. So like we do want to show that. I say this one a lot, it is the balancing act of the extremes. You know, everybody always goes to the extremes. Bloodthirsty killing machine, perfectly tame puppy that makes a great pet. And so we try to educate, you know, and I absolutely do tailor my content towards the other extreme of trying to get the people who hate these animals and want to kill them to learn to love them. But then we go too far into the other side, into that camp of like, oh my God, look at Chris's videos. Obviously they are puppy dogs that love him, and now I want one as a pet. And that's why I'm always doing these videos saying all the time, they don't love me. I love him, he doesn't love me. He's not a pet, he's not tame, he's trained. You know, and that's why we just beat that into people, because again, we're trying to be the middle ground and communicate to both extremes to get reality in the middle, you know? And I think that's a good spot to end this video. So if anybody is like a diehard that actually watched through this entire thing, you know, much love, thank you very much. But I know
we should have a secret word for people to comment. If you watched it to the end, just comment Bojangles. Just like randomly, just comment Bojangles.
Can it
and
not
then
be that word?
Why? It's like the most random word, so then, you know. And then when people are scrolling the comments, they're going to be like, what is Bojangles? And then we know you didn't watch the full video. So just comment one word, Bojangles, if you watched till the end.
Well, I don't blame anybody for not watching this whole thing, because it is just us talking about a very niche subject, you know, so like I get it, you know. But hopefully it is educational, you know. And we
watch it go viral with like 20 million views.
Not a chance. I bet this video gets like 3,000 views tops, you know. And like on YouTube, I can see my graph of like viewership, and it starts at the top, and it just like that's most of them anyways. That's why I just put the crocodilian content in the beginning of all the vlogs, because literally it'll be like first 3 minutes, and then the chart just tanks. You know, nobody watches till the end most of the time. But anyways, thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully you learned something, and you know, let us know your thoughts in the comments.